Hi, everybody, and welcome to Tough to Treat. This is episode number 138, and I'm Susan Clinton, your host for today. Today is our shorter podcast that we've been doing in between our longer clinical podcasts, and this one is titled The Neurophysiological Underpinnings of the Trigeminal System, Part 1. And I know that on the podcast, various podcasts, I've talked a lot about the effect of the upper cervical region and the trigeminal region on muscle recruitment, pelvic floor issues, dizziness, balance, all kinds of things. So this is going to be just the first part. We'll do the next part in December on just the underpinnings of this system and what it means. I hope you enjoy the podcast, and I look forward to you responding and letting me know your thoughts. Thank you very much.
So the professor and I have a bird feeder outside of our window, and I get a chance to look at all the little birds that come through, and they're so twitchy. They're so twitchy, and they're like little systems are just, their heads are moving all the time, and they're pecking at their food, and their heads are moving all the time. And I just kind of one day, me and my little things that I see out in the world and relate it to what I think about with the body was another moment for me. It was like, oh, those birds are like little trigeminal systems. Their whole system is like a trigeminal system. It's just on fire all the time. They fly off, they fly back, they look around, they eat, they fly off, they fly back. So when we think about trigeminal symptoms, we can think about a lot of the things that people have talked about. It's all in your head. You're crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. We can't find anything that's happening to you. And so people with symptoms that can be expressed from a trigeminal system that's running high in the background can have headaches and jaw pain, behind the eye pain, toothache, earache, tingling in the face, tingling in the tongue, tinnitus, dizziness, nausea, conjunctive pain, like my lining of my eye hurts, visual problems, like it's kind of like I'm looking through a little bit of a fog all the time, not like a real optic problem, but it's just kind of like it's just glassy or foggy. Taste problems. A lot of people complain about this, like that little chemical taste or the metallic taste. And sometimes for them, that's a sign and symptom that, their stuff is coming on. And of course, panic attacks. All of these can have an origin into the trigeminal system. And so one of the things that we want to think about when we think about the trigeminal system is we want to talk about the convergence and afferents from one region of the body onto neurons of the central nervous system that receive afferents from a separate region. Okay, so we're talking about referred pain. And so when we think about this, we can think about something. I just want to liken this to something that makes sense to you. So we have a C5, C6 nerve root irritation up in the neck. All right, but we don't get an expression of symptoms in the neck. We get convergence at the C6 segment, all right, where other areas of sensory input and things are happening in the arm. And if you think about the C6 segment, where is that? That's the dorsum of the forearm. And so we think about that we can have an expression of symptoms in the dermatome of C6. So the irritation is up at the spine, but the presentation, the symptom expression is in that dermatome. And so a lot of people get diagnosed with tennis elbow. And tennis elbow is not C5, C6 nerve root irritation. Those are two separate things. Tennis elbow is an inflammation of the extensor brevis in the forearm. And but this C6 nerve root irritation can mimic that. So oftentimes we head down and we do all kinds of crazy things to the elbow. We put a band on it, we rub it, we do all of this stuff. And basically maybe what we needed to do was figure out how to calm down the nerve root. So that's what we're talking about here when we go over to the trigeminal system. So we know we have three different nucleuses for the trigeminal system. So we have the motor, and then we have the system that's up above in the brainstem. And then we have another one. We have a cervical nucleus. Okay, so we have the motor system is the one that you're familiar with. That's the trigeminal that goes to the maxillary mandibular, kind of stuff, and provides like the jaw reflex and, stick the tongue out, mastication, typical cranial nerve 5 stuff. But what is not widely talked about is the other parts of the trigeminal that's sensory. And the trigeminal ganglion, both in the brainstem and in the cervical, provide a complete sensory experience for the entire cranial nerve system. So that's why you get the retroorbital pain. That's why you get the conjunctiva, kind of like irritation. That's why taste changes. All of these things, because the trigeminal system provides the sensory experience for the rest of the cranial nerves, and it interacts with them on those different levels. So that it has an ability to interact here at this level and here in the spinal cord. And this is at the level of C2. It goes as low as C2, C3. So there's a huge nucleus in our spinal cord that has a lot to do with the cranial nerves. And right at C2, C3, and C1, C2 is where we're going to get all of the proprioceptive pieces that go into where the head is in space. We're going to get all the motor stuff for turning the head around in all of the different varying directions, because that all happens in the upper cervical spine. And we're also going to get the bouncing of the head, which is going to affect the vestibular as well as the ocular. And all of that is going to converge at that upper cervical region there. That's where the greatest amount of convergence occurs. So that's the dizziness and the other things, and sometimes the panic attacks and things like that, that can all be driven by a trigeminal system that's running high. This is really important. The eye is really there and needs to be there because we're anticipatory, and we need to, that's where threat is detected, and it's where our environment and what's happening in our environment and all of those things. So the optic piece of all of this is really important too. So you have the balance system, the ocular system, and the cervical system all working together, and right smack in the middle of it, providing all the sensory pieces, perceptive pieces that we need, is the trigeminal ganglion. And when this puppy is running out of control, it can affect so many things. And I just want you to kind of see that and kind of understand that in a system here. Now what we're going to be looking at is referred nociception, central sensitization of the trigeminal system. Okay, so this is the work from Erl Pettman, and I told you he deals with a lot of motor vehicle accidents, people who have suffered motor vehicle accidents and people with whiplash affective disorder. But anyway, the new predator to man, as far as I'm concerned, is automobiles. And if you think about it, more people die in car accidents than anything else, except, of course, now the pandemic. But before the pandemic, it was certainly motor vehicle accidents. All wars, everything, more people die in motor vehicle accidents than anything else. And when you think about it, if somebody is coming up upon your car, which is usually from the back end, from the back left or the back right, there's always this kind of motion that goes to look back up into the mirror or look back behind, triggering that whole cascade of events that we talked about earlier, the flight or fight. So he looks at trauma to the upper cervical spine as something that can set up a higher gain or a higher sensitivity in the trigeminal ganglion that is sitting in the upper cervical area. Okay, just like the C5, C6 nerve root, can bring a cascade of effects down the arm, but it has nothing to do with the arm. It's just where the symptoms are being expressed. So he's looking at the fact that the upper cervical spine may have had trauma. As we move forward, you'll see kind of how it kind of comes in for lack of rotation for other things as well. So you get convergence at that trigeminocervical nucleus that I just talked about. That's where the convergence occurs. And now where the symptoms get expressed can be anywhere along the trigeminal system. And thinking that the trigeminal system is a sensory experience for all of the cranial nerves, now you understand why headaches, eye pain, changes of taste, blurry hearing, like it feels like I almost have like kind of a glass over my ear. Why am I dizzy? Why do I feel funny? What's going on with all of this stuff? And then this is the stuff that people go, oh, you're just crazy. Just, go smile more. And so that's where the trigeminal symptoms are. And then we have other cranial nerve symptoms through interconnecting synapses. So remember, it's the sensory thing. So we can start affecting the other cranial nerves. And remembering that the vestibular system is part of the cranial nerve system. The ocular system is part of the cranial nerve system. And the upper cervical spine is as well. So we can have an ability to, we can see how this whole system can really start to affect this. But here's just a little thing. So glossopharyngeal, here's the vagus, and here's the accessory. You remember these guys, that they were all coming out of the head at the same place? The accessory, the vagus, the glossopharyngeal, and the hypoglossal would be in here too. and here's the pharyngeal and the laryngeal. So now we're seeing how all of this stuff can affect voice, and then it affects the ear, the tympanic, it affects the eyes, the auricular. So all of these things can be affected by the trigeminal system.